Welcome to the Moonshots Podcast. It's episode 128. I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and as always, I'm joined by the man who has many rules for life, Mr. Mark Peterson Freeland. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. You're right. Those rules for life, they seem to be growing every single week. Every episode, we get new advice, tips, guidance from our moonshotters, those superstars, entrepreneurs. And I don't know, my journal, my mantras, my list of things I need to stick by each week, it seems to be growing.
I know what you mean. And boy, get ready for them to grow because we have a heavyweight to decode and to learn from today. Who is it, Mark?
Today, we're beginning a new two-part series based on the work of Jordan Peterson and his book from actually not too distant future, Mike. It was only in 2018, The 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos.
Holy smoke. What are we even doing, Mark? It's taken us 128 shows to get to Jordan Peterson, who is a huge in the philosophical, the search for meaning space. He is a powerhouse, and whenever he travels around the world, he sells out like huge. He came to Australia, and a friend of mine went, and he sold out the Sydney Opera House.
Wow.
So that tells you the draw power of Jordan Peterson. Mark, why do you think he is so important and so critical for us to study here on the Moonshots podcast?
Well, I think the attraction for Jordan Peterson for a lot of readers, as well as those who go and see him live, is this idea of, self-help, the idea of learning something from him based on his work as a clinical psychologist, as well as a professor, and more recently a kind of YouTube personality. But for me, digging into his rules over the last week or two, it strikes me that these rules that we'll begin digging into today are very, very accessible. They appear to me as though anybody can follow these rules. You don't have to be a huge celebrity or a big name in music or business or a family man. Anybody can listen to these rules, read these rules, and I think take something away from them.
Yeah, he is a great thinker, a provocative thinker. And for all of you, our listeners, I think we've got a great show ahead because it's going to cover everything from adventure, responsibility, wisdom, freedom. And I think this is 12 rules. We're going to do the first 6 today. There's just so much in them, we can't possibly jam them into one show. But if you're on a mission, if you're trying to be the best version of yourself, you're trying to build a company, a team, a product, whatever you're trying to do, sometimes we get a little off track, and something like 12 practical and profound rules for life is just what we need to bring ourselves back into the moment to be the best version of ourselves. So I'm pumped, Mark. I think we're going to have a lot to discuss today. Where do you want to start?
I want to start with Jordan Peterson telling us rule number 1, which is stand up straight with your shoulders back.
So chapter 1 is a bit of a meditation on the nature of hierarchies and the biochemistry of hierarchy, but it's also an injunction about how to present yourself, because you want to present yourself to the world in a manner that doesn't disgrace you in some sense. That might be a good way to think about it. And you don't want to disgrace yourself, because the consequence of disgrace is emotional dysregulation, more pain, less positive emotion. And so the best way to present yourself is to stand up forthrightly and to stretch out, and to occupy some space, and to you make yourself sort of vulnerable by doing that, because you open up the front of your body, right? But it's a sign of confidence, and that way people are most likely to give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's a good way to start regulating your mood. But not only does it directly regulate your mood to stand up, because it's so tightly associated, like posture reflection is associated with serotonin and emotional regulation, but also because if you straighten up and you present yourself in that manner, then other people are more likely to take you seriously. And that means they'll start treating you as if you're a number 1 lobster instead of a number 10 lobster. And that's another way that you can at least give yourself the bloody benefit of the doubt, right? And confront the world in a courageous manner. And that's a really good way of figuring out how to establish yourself in multiple competence hierarchies, because one of the general rules of thumb about how to be successful is to confront things that frighten you forthrightly and with courage. And that's kind of a universal strategy for success.
Oh, I love this. This reminds me of William H. McRaven, who says, "Make your bed," doesn't it, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Admiral McRaven. That was a great episode, wasn't it? You know, beginning your day with that assurance as well as confidence. So no matter what you run into during the rest of the day, you've got that foundation when you come home.
Right. And this is exactly the same. This is basically saying, you know, stand up straight and put your shoulders back and present your best selves. And I liked how, you know, Peterson was kind of like, give yourself the benefit of the doubt, which I said differently is like, you know, if you're going to if you're going to tell a story, if you're going to ask something of someone, if you're going to present something, if you're going to have a conversation, set yourself up for success. Stand up straight. Don't have a defensive posture. Don't be all slouched. And it's ancient wisdom, like just set yourself up for success. I kind of like the fact that for someone who can, you know, elevate his thinking to the very highest levels, can start with something so damn practical, Mark. It's great, isn't it?
Well, it's funny. It reminds me, in fact, this is a rule that wasn't necessarily put towards me as a rule back when I was a whippersnapper, as you say. I remember doing a drama class when I was about 15, and our teacher told us, whenever you're doing a talk, whenever you're making a speech, a monologue on stage, have both feet flat and make your legs quite, you know, straight down towards the ground. And you can feel this energy kind of come up through the ground. And I think what she's saying was, don't slouch, don't stand to one side, make sure to emanate that confidence. And I think you're right. It's a very practical tip that in my history, I kind of learned it through drama. But isn't it funny to now hear it being brought up again from a psychologist, basically saying how you hold yourself not only impacts your body, you're straightening up, your body's kind of getting ready to go out there, but also in front of others, you're putting across that eminence of courage, of confidence.
Yeah. As a father, it reminds me when my son was younger of like instructing him that when he greets people, he says hello and looks them in the eye, right? It takes me right back to that. Another more practical one, it reminds me of, which I believe it might have been the Simon Sinek show or one of the many that we've done, where he talked about not putting your phone on the table when you're in a meeting, because it's a gesture to suggest that at any point, if that device was to notify you, you will put your attention to them and not to the person in front of you, which again, I really do like that. I think I was a little bit naughty. I think I fell a victim a lot to having the phone on the table. So I tried to put that aside when I'm actually in the same room having a meeting with humans and not doing it through Zoom. But that's another good one, isn't it? Yeah,
that's good, isn't it, as well? I think both of those remind me of just what Peterson's doing in his book, 12 Rules for Life. They are quite practical. And as the listeners, as well as you and I, Mike, will find out during today's show, they are quite practical recommendations and rules, aren't they? They are things that, as long as we remember in our minds, we can all kind of go and do. The phone example on the table, all of us can do that, whether we're in a meeting or whether we go out for dinner. Putting it away to one side removes the anxiety of the other person, thinking that at any moment you might stand up and go and take a call.
Yeah.
And what Peterson's calling out here, you stand up straight. People know that you are confident in yourself. Therefore, hey, I can feel confident in you too.
Oh, yeah. There's so much in this. And one production note is that we've been getting so much feedback from all of you, our listeners, over the last period, that we actually have a question for you, our listeners, which is, as you can tell, that we're going to break Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. We're going to break it into two parts. So today we're going to do the first 6 rules, and next week we will do the subsequent 6. Now, here's the big thing. Jordan Peterson has written another book, Beyond Order, and also extremely popular, bit of a powerhouse as well. But Mark, we need a little bit of guidance, don't we?
Well, we do. Listeners, we need you guys to tell us whether you'd like us to launch straight in. If you want us to continue the highway of Jordan Peterson and you want us to continue driving down it once we go through Jordan Peterson's first 12 rules for life. If you'd like us to go straight into Beyond Order, 12 more rules for life, let us know. We're only going to do it once we hear from you. You are, as Mike, I think you put them, our listeners earlier, our exec producers to a certain extent. We want to hear from you guys whether this is what you'd like us to go and do.
Yeah, and just to build on that, it would be 4 back-to-back Jordan Peterson shows. And I think our question is that too heavy duty? Is it just, do you need a breather in between, a little halftime break where Gaga kind of flies in from the roof of the stadium or something like that? Let us know, because we obviously want to make sure you get the most out of it. We've done 4 in a row of one author before, haven't we, Mark?
Well, I think actually we've done 4 in a row for a few people. The most recent one that comes to my mind is Ryan Holiday.
Yeah,
and that was a very popular series. We've also done Tim Ferriss, a 4-parter.
Gladwell, I think, was 4 as well.
Gladwell was 4. Our first series on Adam Grant, I think, was 3. So we have done a few quite long series on authors, entrepreneurs, superstars before. But here's where, listeners, we want your recommendation. Yep. Would you like us to continue that same vibe and do a 4-part series on Mr. Jordan Peterson?
Let us know. So you can send us an email at hello@moonshots.io or go to moonshots.io itself. There's about a gazillion ways you can contact us or hit the socials. But however you choose to contact us, it would be much appreciated. And the other thing that would be much appreciated in this day and age, according to Jordan Peterson, is actually thinking about your own well-being. And he has some really, I love this idea, the way he presented it. So let's have a listen to Jordan Peterson talking about taking ownership of how you really want to treat yourself.
Rule number 2 is treat yourself like you're someone that you care about. And that's a deeper chapter, I would say. Like chapter 1 is kind of comical, but it's also got this serious scientific end, for example, and it's practical, like most of the rules are. Chapter 2 is a bit of a meditation on why. See, I read this piece of work by Jung a long while back, and it was a meditation on the injunction to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. Something like that. And what Jung pointed out, which I really liked, was that wasn't an injunction to be nice to other people. It was an invitation to reciprocity. It was something like this. It's like, you should figure out how you would like to be treated, like you were taking care of yourself, not how you would like people to respond to you. It's more important than that. It's like, imagine you had a child that you really cared for, and someone said, well, people will treat this child exactly like you want them to, but you have to figure out what that is. And so then you'd have to sit down for like a month and you'd think, okay, well, how do you want your child to be treated? You don't want everyone just to be nice to him, you know, you want people to challenge him, and you want people to discipline him, and you want people to tell him when he's wrong. It's like, you don't just want everyone to be nice. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. There's no challenge in that. And so, well, you want to treat other people like you would like to be treated. Well, then you have to figure out, how would you like to be treated? And while you'd like people to fawn all over you and just lay everything at your feet, it's like, no, that's not something you'd wish for someone that you were taking care of. And then there's an additional problem, which is it's often the case that people will treat other people better than they treat themselves. That happens extremely frequently. So one of the things I pointed out in chapter 2 was that if you have a dog and you take him to a vet and the vet gives you the prescription medicine, you'll go buy the medicine and you will give it to the dog and you will do it properly. But if you go yourself to a doctor and you get a prescription, there's a 30% chance you won't even pick up the medication. And if you do, there's a 50% chance that you won't administer it to yourself properly. And so I really thought about that. When I first came across that statistic, it was another one of those little facts. I thought, what the hell's up with that? It's like, you'll do it for your dog, so obviously you'll do it for something you care about, and you're conscientious enough so you'll actually do it. So like, why wouldn't you do it for you? Your dog likes you, even your dog would rather that you did, but you don't. And it's actually one of the reasons that modern medicine doesn't work nearly as well as it could, because people just don't take their medication. And it's not only because they don't take care of themselves. There's some skepticism about doctors, but you could be just as skeptical about the vet. So it's a deep meditation, I would say. And it's what I've done with these rules is they're very simple rules, and they're kind of comical and tongue-in-cheek in some ways. But what I've tried to do is like pull them apart and show what's underneath them, and to go down as deep as I possibly can. And in rule 2, it's a bit of a meditation on why people don't like themselves very much.
Okay, that's a nice meaty clip there, wasn't it, Mike? And
oh boy,
for me, it's a biggie, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Because what happened to me when he was talking, so you realize, oh yeah, you just think, just be nice, but it's way more than that.
That's it for me. That was a big penny drop aha moment. When he references Jung and really what he's trying to say, rather than just thinking, okay, well, yeah, I can go out and be nice to people. I can treat them how I want to be treated. That's fine from a surface level. I don't want people to spit on me. I don't want them to trip me up in the street. So I won't do that either. But when you layer back that onion and you look at it even deeper, first you need to understand, well, how do I want to be treated? How do I want to take care of myself? And that's very, very introspective, isn't it? And I don't think it's something that a lot of us do very often. I know that we, and I've certainly got something that I do, which I'll share with you in a second, Mike. But I think it's something that's pretty challenging, isn't it? To take ownership of what you personally want to do from a treatment perspective and how you want others to treat you. It can be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and because I think what he's really pushing into is, of course, you should be courteous and respectful and pleasant, right? But what he's really saying here is that if you think about a good friend of yours, it's easy to be nice and pleasant and to have fun. But the true friends are the ones that tell you, there's this great Dutch saying, a true friend will tell you when you've got spinach caught in your teeth.
Yeah.
Right. And the point is getting called out when you're not at your best and either saying, hey, you're off track, or B, do you need help? What can I do to support you? Helping them be accountable to their promises. That's when things get really cooking, right? That's when real friendships come to the fore. And what he's challenging us to do is, like you might hold your friends accountable to their goals and say, hey, come on, you can do it. What can I do to help? That you must also do the same work on yourself.
Ooh. So, Mike, how do you do that work on yourself?
Well, I know when my wife, when she tells me something, she keeps me honest, man. Like, that's seriously,
yeah.
She will call me out, and it might be hard, but when she calls me out, I always prioritize it.
That's nice.
always prioritize it. And more practically, I have these mantras, my own rules for life that I actually write down a lot. So, I am frequently visiting. So in my Todoist, I have 97 mantras. I'm just looking at it as we're chatting.
97?
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So this is how I do it. So the one that I've been focus on is these, which include things like be still and quiet, for there is much to hear. Start the day as if it's a brand new life, a clean slate. Do your most important work first. Listen to understand, and lots of others. But those things I write down and I reflect on constantly. constantly. I even, wait for this, Mark, I even record my mantras and play them back to me. So
Nice.
I can just listen to them on the train, listen to them when I'm walking. Because I think I'm like I have to bombard myself and remind myself and reflect for myself on these rules. And for me, like a great way to frame them is, if I only had 10 truths that I could tell my son, what would they be? Right?
Wow, that's powerful. That's interesting.
Yeah. What about you? How do you kind of have that focus so that you're not just busy, caring for your wife, for your work colleagues, your family, and your friends? How do you kind of keep yourself on track?
It's been, I think it's probably been something that I've learned or maybe experimented with more as I get older, and you've been married again with partners that you live with all the time, who see you behind the curtain, so to speak, and you go through stresses as you get older and so on. And I think for me, the thing that I've challenged myself with doing, which I was always quite guilty of not doing when I was younger, is actually talking about things out loud.
Right.
So I was very good at internalizing stuff before thinking about journaling and so on. It was very easy to almost compartmentalize your life and think, okay, well, I'm stressed about work. I won't tell anyone because it's not their problem. I'll just get on with it. And that in its own way, I'm still guilty of sometimes. And I think that for me is what I'm trying to work on better nowadays, voicing it out loud. Because as we know, if you name the beast, if you confront it head on, it does feel a lot better, doesn't it? A problem shared is a problem halved is always a favorite phrase that I've always remembered, which I still think is really powerful. But for me, that was a pretty big aha moment as I started to learn that worked for me. That's how I tried and take responsibility for how I want to be treated, because I get to reflect on how I feel. I'll talk about it out loud with somebody. I do journal as well, as our listeners have probably heard us speak about many, many times.
Oh, no, they're going to go on the journal rant again. Stop. Not
Where's
journal.
McConaughey when you need him?
Oh, before you know it, they're going to talk about cold showers again. Stop.
No. Exactly. But all of these are really good. And actually the cold shower one reminded me of, I'm looking at my Todoist mantras right now. And that's another thing that I do. I will try and take ownership of what my situation is right now by bringing myself into this moment. I'll sniff the air. I'll notice what's around me. I'll feel how I'm sitting, or as Jordan Peterson has in his first rule, stand up straight. That in its own way is a way of us connecting with what we're doing right now, isn't it? It's reminding us, right, stand up straight. You're stretching your back out. I'll try and do that if I'm in a situation where I've kind of flatlined, so to speak. When you're not really engaged too much because you're thinking about something else. I think rule number one is a great demonstration of being responsible for yourself, because you're bringing yourself back into that moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the most important thing is whether you have mantras, whether you have a diary and that you journal, these are all ways into these 12 rules of life from Jordan Peterson. So whichever rules work for you, our listeners, I think my big advice is write it down, reflect on it. Don't just read it and go, oh, that's nice. Or listen to Mike and Mark speaking about it and go, oh, yeah, that's a good one. I should think about that. You have to internalize it. You have to put the ingredients together, cook the recipe, and truly taste these ideas. And so you can not only think them, but they can come true as your behaviors and how you choose to lead your life. And one of the biggest decisions that we actually have in our life are the books we read, the great podcasts you listen to, but it's also the people you surround yourself with. So let's have a listen to rule number 3 from Mr. Jordan Peterson, which is all about friends. The
next rule is make friends with people who want the best for you. And that's a meditation on my own childhood and adolescence to some degree. I had friends who wanted the best for me and friends who didn't. And, they were friends who, some of them were aiming up and some of them were aiming down. And if you have a friend that's aiming down and you do something that's aiming up, then they're generally not that happy about it. They try to top your accomplishment with one of their own, hypothetical or real, or put down what you're doing, or offer you a cigarette if you're trying to quit and you've kind of done that successfully, or a drink if you've been drinking too much and are trying to stop being an alcoholic, or they're cynical and bitter and devoted towards no good. And sometimes that's family members too, and sometimes it's even part of you. But this chapter is an injunction to people, is like you have an ethical responsibility to take care of yourself, you have an ethical responsibility to surround yourself with people who have the courage and faith and wisdom to wish you well when you've done something good, and to stop you when you're doing something destructive. And if your friends aren't like that, then they're not your friends. And maintaining your friendships with them might not even be in their interest. And so it's a tricky argument to make, because I'm not saying, whenever anyone's in trouble, you should, push them into a ditch and then give them a couple of kicks. That's not the idea. The idea is that, but I had a couple of rules I didn't write about. One was be careful about whom you share good news with, and another was be careful about whom you share bad news with. And those rules ring in people's minds quite quickly. A friend is someone you can share good news with. You go to them and you say, hey, look, this good thing happened to me, and they say, look, I'm so happy that happened to you, like, way to be. And they don't think, God damn it, why didn't that happen to me? And you didn't deserve it, and here's a bunch of reasons you're stupid and why it won't work. It's like, that's not helpful. And so I would say, if people are, the other thing people are doing, if they're trying to drag you down, let's say, is they're trying to see if you'll put up with it. Because they have this idea that maybe life isn't worth living and things aren't good, and that if they can besmirch, let's say, to use an archaic term, something that's pristine and good, then they demonstrate to themselves that there is no true ideal and that there's no necessary reason to be responsible and to strive forward. And so they use you as a test case. I'll just push you down into the low lobster bin and see how you respond. And if you put up with it, then my cynicism is fully justified. And so, that's chapter 3.
So take ownership of what makes you happy, treat yourself as if you were someone else, and now take ownership of those who are around you and find the people who want the best for you. Very connected, I think.
So good, right? So good. I mean, the thing is that what he's saying is, and this really comes back to some of the recent shows we've done, is focus on the things that you control, and your things that you control are your inputs. Exactly. And as I was saying earlier, it's not just your friends, it's your colleagues, the clients, the business partners, family, friends, teachers, coaches, mentors. You have control of them. Books, you have control of them. What shows you choose to watch on television? One of the interesting things that I always decide is when I do have those rare moments that I can actually watch Netflix, do I want to have a more chilled, reflective time? So maybe I go a documentary. If I really want to chill out, I will always watch something like a David Attenborough sort of nature documentary. Or if I'm kind of feeling really energetic, then I might take something a little bit more of a thriller or action or something like this. But those are conscious choices I make, because sometimes, if I'm exhausted, I don't like getting all pumped up in some really exciting show. I want to chill. But it's the same thing with your friends and your colleagues. If you don't have a genuine connection with them, you don't have genuine care and fondness of the people that you're around, and likewise back to you, reciprocity, as Jordan Peterson talked about. If there's not, it's okay if people just, for whatever reason, it's not going to work. You're not meant to be besties. That's fine. That's no judgment on either party, but orientate yourself. Try and maximize the time with the good people, and actively avoid being around people who don't have your interests at heart. I think, again, simple, but man, that's good stuff to reflect on, to keep us on track, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, I like how Peterson actually calls out it's an ethical responsibility that you have. You have to take ownership of those who are around you. And I like your connection to the Netflix consumption. Again, it's a good comparison. You control that. Only you are going to put on what you want to watch. Mm-hmm. And more than likely for a lot of us, as well as our listeners, you fall into a habit with friends and those around you, whether they're colleagues and so on. And they can be a little bit either self-destructive, or they can be a little bit, dare I say, depressing, I suppose. These sort of characters who will just stay in the same headspace. And if you're trying to exercise perhaps a more of a growth mindset, but you haven't got the right people around you to help you facilitate that, it can be as dangerous as not doing it yourself. You can be talked out of it. And I think, again, very, very practical, very, very sensible rules that Peterson's showing to us, but very, very oriented around focusing on what you can control. I think that comparison there is spot on, actually.
Yeah, and I would say just check your energy. Like, if you feel good with people, that's a leading indicator that they might actually care about you. If you feel like a little bit odd or exhausted, or you find yourself, I don't know if I really want to hang out with them, then just listen to that voice. It's just your conscious saying, hey, whoa, it's a signal.
Listen to the voice. Yeah. Exactly.
Now, there is another way that we can listen to voices, two amazing voices, in fact. That's right. That's you, Mark, and me, because we have a little bit of an idea that we're getting a lot of love for. What do you think we need to share with our listeners today?
The voice inside our listeners' heads in this certain moment is obviously yourself and I, Mike. So, listeners, we've been blown away by how many of you have got in touch with us just over the past couple of weeks in response to our call out and request and almost invitation to know whether we should go out and develop a Moonshots application. And this Moonshots application would be our next layer between you, our listeners, and us sitting in our production towers, slaving away, pulling together the show. We want to create something that perhaps is a little bit more engaging for you, our listeners. You can get in touch with us, interact with our show in more than one way, as well as vote for future shows. And Mike, I've been blown away. How have you responded to the amount of people getting in touch with us?
Well, my inbox is getting a bit full, I can tell you that much. Look, it's great. Thank you to Paul and Rick and Terry, Aoife Maria, Bruce, Sheila, Pennington, all these people that are signing up for our beta of our Moonshots app, where we still need about another 50 before we can do this, because we just want to make sure that enough of you, our listeners, our Moonshotters, that you truly think that it might be of value. And, to recap on what we would include in the app, you'd be able to have like a very rich listening experience. So you can bookmark, comment, like, share, and have a whole kind of inventory of your favorite shows with all of your bookmarks in one central place. The other thing, which is really important, is you'll be able to submit and vote for future shows. So you can kind of, as our executive producers, you can kind of guide us in the right direction. And lastly, there's going to be lots of training and coaching content. And that's going to be pretty revolutionary, because what we will do is invert the whole model of the show. And what I mean by that is you will be able to type a subject that you're interested in, and you will be given a cross-reference of all the shows, all the clips, all of the people that you can learn from around that particular subject. So we're putting a huge amount of work into creating this Moonshots data model. And it's huge. And what it would effectively mean is, whether you're trying to improve yourself, your decisions, or how you lead teams, you will be able to say, you know what, I want to work on reflection. And then you will have an inventory of all the great thinking about reflection. You might say, you know what, I need to make a better decision, or I face a problem and I don't know how to analyze it. Well, we'll have a whole section on critical thinking. And it's all about getting you to the fastest pathway to being the best version of yourself. Anyway, so this is the idea for the Moonshots app. And if people are interested, Mark, in the beta, where should they go?
Pop along to www.moonshots.io and you will find our banner sitting at the very top of the page where you can click on and sign up for the free beta of the Moonshots app.
Nice one. So now I think it's time to stretch our arms a little bit and get ready for 3 more left, right, left punches. This is kind of a mental workout at the gym from Jordan Peterson. We are now into rules 4, 5, and 6 from his book, 12 Rules for Life. This is a big one. And this time we have some thinking from the man himself about to whom we should compare ourselves.
You really have to stop comparing yourself in some ways to other people. And the reason for that is that the particularities of your life are so idiosyncratic that there isn't anyone really all that much like you, because the details of your life happen to matter. And so maybe you compare yourself to some rock star or something like that. And, the person's rich and famous and glamorous and all that, but, they're alcoholic and they use too much cocaine and they've had 3 divorces. And it's like, how the hell do you make sense out of that? Is that someone that you should judge yourself harshly against or not? The answer is you don't know, because you don't know all the details of their lives. And who do you know that you can compare yourself to? That's easy. You. Yesterday. So here's a good goal. It's something like, well, aim high. And I really mean that. It's like, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Aim high, but use as your control yourself. It's like, so your goal is to make today some tiny increment better than yesterday. And you can use better, you can define better yourself. This doesn't have to be some imposition of external morality. You know where you're weak and insufficient, where you could improve. You think, okay, well, this is what I'm like yesterday. If I did this little thing, things would be just an increment better. And, well, that's a great thing, because you get the ball rolling, and incremental improvement is unstoppable. You can actually implement it, and it starts to generate Pareto distribution-like consequences. It starts to compound. And I've seen that happen in people's lives over and over. People write me all the time and tell me that they're doing that, but I've seen that happen in people's lives continually. They make a goal that, the goal should be, how could I conceive of my life so that if I had that life, it would clearly be worth living, so I wouldn't have to be bitter, resentful, deceitful, arrogant, and vengeful.
Oh, geez, those were some pretty... He was about to go dark then, wasn't he?
He was getting into it there. But I think that's a good point to pause and reflect, because I think that's really what this clip and this rule number 4 is all about. It's reflection, isn't it, Mike? It's reflecting on who you are. Who am I? Who's Mark? And where was I perhaps yesterday? Or after a significant event, maybe today, whenever it is. And instead of constantly thinking, oh, well, I'm not as influential as Peterson, instead remember that it's not a worthwhile comparison. For me, again, this is a bit of a penny drop moment, because it's very, very easy to compare yourself, your successes, your career, your interests and hobbies even to somebody else. But the truth is, it's not a fair comparison because of how different your upbringing has been, your environment, your ecosystem, and so on. And I don't know, for me, this is quite a big moment actually as we go through these rules from Peterson, because like you were just saying, that compound interest is significant as we look at our ways of being better each day. That's really what Peterson's calling out here. Stop trying to shoot towards the Elon Musks, perhaps, and instead think, okay, well, what can I learn from them? And how can I make myself better? Just small little pieces each day in order to try and make myself get that little bit better.
Yeah, 2 thoughts that come to mind here. Number 1, it's such wasted energy comparing yourself to others, because number 1, if you are looking at others going, oh, geez, they're doing so much better than me. Well, here's the thing. There is no positive energy to be gained from that thought. That is your ego speaking. Eckhart Tolle would be going bonkers right now if he heard you doing that kind of stuff, right? So first of all, there's nothing to gain from that envy, that jealousy, that ego. Like there's nothing to gain. That's the first thing. Second thing, I can't remember which show it was on, but one of the clips we've played in the last month or two, Mark, someone said, well, the working class guy is looking at the rich guy envying his money, and the rich guy is looking at the working class guy envying the simplicity of his life.
Yeah.
And the reality is a lot of us are all looking at each other, envying each other's situation. So it tells you it's like this big circular kind of cluster. The reality is that the best thing you can do is make commitments to yourself and work hard to reach them every single day. And if you can just be 1% better every day, this is huge, because if you do it every single day, day after day, you will turn back maybe in a week, in a month, maybe it's a whole year. And then you go all of a sudden, wow, look at that. I mean, we started this show, Mark, and we would get a couple of 100 listeners each month. And 2 years later, we get 25,000 listeners a month, and it just is growing like crazy. But each show, we just turn up, do it a little bit better. And we can do that in our lives. And here's the thing, because everyone makes mistake, there's no such thing as perfect. What there is working hard, learning, and doing it a little bit better than next time. Because that learning is so satisfying, because even if you're not at your end goal, if you can love the process, if you can get addicted to the compounding, the meaning in your day comes from knowing that, hey, I did it better yesterday. Hey, and today I did it a little bit better again. And if you can just bring yourself into the moment and say, am I doing it better now? Then you can not be held hostage by all those comparisons that Jordan Peterson talks about. I mean, this I think a lot of people in the age of Instagram and social media struggle with a lot. I think everybody thinks everyone else is having a great life.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's very easy to look at whether it's podcasts, social media. Everybody's got a TV show nowadays. It's an unfair ecosystem to try and compare yourself to others, isn't it? And what you've just said, it's wasted energy. Instead of looking at somebody else thinking, oh, I wish I had what they had, channel that into something more productive.
Yeah,
compound
take
interest.
this example, Mark. Have you seen like all the Instagram models getting in trouble for photoshopping the last few months?
Yeah.
So why would you compare yourself if you're a woman looking at those women? Why would you even compare yourself? Because it's all photoshopped anyway.
It's photoshopped and fake anyway.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, it's that wasted energy. And Gary V, that might be, Mike, the episode that perhaps you were referencing, because I know the Gary V show that we did was very orientated around this idea of not comparing yourself to others, and the imbalance between, a rich person wanting the simplicity, or, somebody else wanting the rich lifestyle. And, again, that show with Gary V, he was calling this out, wasn't it? It's fake anyway. Stop being distracted by where somebody else is, because it's not the right thing to judge yourself on.
That's absolutely right. I think that your own success comes from setting your own goals and meeting them, because, you set something, a goal that you control, and you're not worried about externalities. I mean, that was a huge part of what Ryan Holiday said in the Stoicism series, like stop worrying about things you don't control. Bring yourself into the present, focus on the things that you control. And that's where all the what I would argue, at least satisfaction and fulfillment comes from. Maybe you might even find some real meaning there as well. But I think this is great advice. And I think the great thing about Jordan Peterson's work is that I mean, he's got advice not only for ourselves, but Mark, he'll even give us parenting tips, won't he?
Yeah, this is another great example of the variety of rules that Peterson has in the 12 Rules for Life. So rule number 5, Mike, is Peterson giving us, like you say, just that little bit of advice around raising our children.
You don't want to set them up as an enemy against you. You don't want to allow them to engage in the kind of hierarchical challenge that makes you irritable and resentful. That's not a good idea. And if the things they do make you dislike them, the probability that they will make other people dislike them is extraordinarily high. And so you can consult your own irritability. And you can say, look, kid, I used to tell my kids this, when they were 3 or 4, I'd say, look, I'm not in a very good mood. And I'm likely to be unreasonable, so it'd be best if you'd go in your room and play for a while. It's like, I like you, man. You're a great kid, but get the hell out of here for a while. And they were fine with that. We'd trained them already at that point to be able to go play by themselves in their room, which is something a kid should be able to do anyways. But you need to know what sort of monster you are if you're going to be a good parent. And if you think, oh, I'm not a monster, it's like, oh, yes, you are. You're just an unbelievably unconscious monster, and that's actually the worst kind. So, and then the other thing about that chapter is there's an idea in it, and it's an idea that I think is well supported by the relevant literature, which is that your fundamental job as a parent, especially of a child from 0 to 4, is to make that child eminently desirable socially. So you're a successful parent if, when your child is 4, all sorts of other children want to play with him or her. That's really that's like if you want one marker of whether or not you've been successful.
It's a pretty practical tip there, Mike, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And
make sure they're nice people.
The funny thing is, though, if you take a moment to think that one through, it's really fascinating because whilst he uses the metaphor of children, just apply the same thinking to the workplace. And what you could say is your job as a manager is to make sure that your team members are able to collaborate and work together, and that people want to come together with a given individual, that they have the skills to communicate and collaborate. Essentially, just essential skills. They sound incredibly simple, but actually, how much work do we need to put into those skills? And I think a manager of a team needs to make sure that his team members have the capacity to interact with each other in a productive, respectful manner. I see a direct correlation.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. This is a nice comparison perhaps with Patrick Lencioni, how, as well as Jim Collins, from a leadership perspective. You want to try and raise or at least lead a team who like one another. And in an age when a lot of us are working remotely and so on, it can become a lot more difficult, though, can't it? And I think as a leader who's faced with those sort of challenges, I can imagine it's very, very, very tricky to actually go and create that unity between the family/team members.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's, lead through your actions, right? That's the starting point there. It's like how you behave with your family, your partner, your children, how you flip it into the workplace, how you interact with your peers and colleagues and your teammates. That's the starting point. If you're acting like an idiot, well, what do you expect the rest of them, the rest of the team to do? They're just going to act like idiots because you're setting the tone. Yeah. There's just so much in his work, isn't there? I mean, for me, it's just sometimes these feel like ancient truths rewritten for the modern day. But I do think that it's so powerful to, whether you read a book like this once or whether you read it once a year, I think they can just help you get back on track. And I think the truth is we all get a little bit off track. And sometimes when we're off track, Mark, let's say someone's struggling, what are some of the bad habits that they get into if they're not really doing well and they can feel it? What sort of behaviors do you observe in teams and at work, Mark, if someone's a bit off track?
I think what happens is there's a lot of finger pointing, isn't there?
Yeah. A lot of judgment, a lot of criticism.
Judgment.
Avoidance.
Exactly. Maybe even aggression, whether it's forthright or passive.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty common trait, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a bad vibe, but it's also not particularly productive. I mean, sure, if someone isn't living up to not only the team's expectations, but the commitments that individual's made, sure, you need to call them out, but publicly shaming them, I don't think has ever produced a positive result, has it?
No, I don't think so. And this final clip that we're going to hear today in show 128, which is rule 6 of Peterson's 12 rules for life, is bringing that to light actually. So listeners, rule number 6 from Jordan Peterson, he's going to tell us a little bit about how we should reflect on ourselves before we criticize others.
So it's a rough chapter, but it's more than that. It's a meditation on resentment, because resentment is a key human motivation. And I would say it's a great teacher. To listen to your resentment is one of the best things you can possibly do. You have to admit that it exists first, and then you have to admit to the fantasies that it's generating, and you have to admit to what you would regard as the way out of it. So that's all very difficult, because it means learning things about yourself that you probably don't want to learn. But resentment only means one of two things. It means either like shut the hell up, grow up, quit whining and get on with it. That's one thing it means. Or someone is playing the tyrant to you, might even be you, and you have something to say and do that you should say and do to put it to a stop. And so and resentment can show you the pathway to doing that. There's a meditation on resentment, and one of the principles that I extracted from that is, like, a resentful person wants other people to change. And if you're resentful, then your motivations aren't trustworthy. In fact, they're very, very dark. And that's why I went to the extreme with people like Panzram and the Columbine killers. Resentful people who want to change the world are not to be trusted. What should you do instead? How do you treat your own resentment? I would say, well, I read this great line in a T.S. Eliot play called The Cocktail Party. And in it, this woman comes up to a psychiatrist. I think this is in this chapter. And she says, I'm having a really rough time of it. I'm suffering badly. My life is not going well. And then she says, I hope that there's something wrong with me. And the psychiatrist says, well, what the hell do you mean by that? And she says, well, here's how I look at it. There's either something wrong with the world, and I'm just in it, and that's how it is. And then, what am I going to do about that? Because it's the whole world. Or maybe I could be fortunate and there's something wrong with me that's causing all this unnecessary suffering. And if I could just set it right. I could learn and I could set it right. And so, I've been thinking about that for a very long time. And I think, if your life isn't going the way it is, you can find someone else to blame, which is pretty convenient for you and also relatively easy. Or you could think, okay, I don't like life. I don't like the way my life is unfolding. Maybe I don't like life in general because it's tragic and tainted with evil. How do I know if my judgment is accurate? And the question is, have I really done everything I possibly could to set my life straight? Because maybe I shouldn't be judging its quality or the quality of life itself, or being itself for that matter, if I haven't done everything I possibly could to set my life straight.
What a heavy duty clip, Mark. I mean, he came out and for number 6, that one is a bit of a, right?
That's such a, again, the theme of these first 6 rules to me are reflection, aren't they? They're very much orientated around, take ownership of yourself rather than allowing either outside stimulus to affect you, and simultaneously don't interact poorly for others. And that one there, this idea of getting everything right in your life first before you criticize others, really comes down to, again, this concept of ownership, doesn't it? And asking yourself, have you done everything you can today to be that best version of yourself?
I like how you were saying, look, if you do catch yourself blaming, then use it as an opportunity to be like a flag for yourself because it's such a negative energy. I really like that. And, for me, I think we all have moments where we feel like we're the victim, right? We want to blame every single thing that we possibly can, people, circumstances, whatever. But the truth really is that if you find yourself saying, poor me, that means that actually the person that's accountable for this situation is not the guy down the road. It's you. You got yourself here. And it's probably you could go back to the other 5 and find something in there. Are you taking responsibility? Are you standing tall? Are you really doing the right thing, right? So I think this is really, really good because I think it is such a natural emotion to go, what? This isn't fair, right? Like I didn't deserve this, or we, the team, the company, we didn't deserve that. That's not fair. Well, that just is what it is. And don't indulge this because I think it's so counterproductive, isn't it? What you have to do is go, okay, in every hardship, there's a lesson, right? You got to go yucko willink, problem, good, right? That's what you got to do to get yourself right, to live the very best life you can. I think what I took from Eckhart Tolle is when you do find the ego talking, right? The first thing you can do is identify that it's your ego talking, and actually it's not really you. And you can have a choice in how your mindset is set in the world, don't you? You don't have to fall victim to the ego.
No, and I think building on the Eckhart Tolle episode we did just a few weeks ago, followed by Adam Grant's latest book, don't let that ego take control, because ultimately you have control over what you believe and how you react to things. So when you do find yourself responding perhaps in a self-sabotage way or something that's overly critical to others, instead just be aware of it. Notice it in yourself and think, okay, well, hang on. Is this how I would treat myself? Do I know how much I should be criticizing others if I haven't really done that homework myself? And again, Jordan references a number of times in the clips today the fact that this book is a little bit of a meditation for him. He said this in a few different clips. And I think what he means by that is it's bringing him back down to his core foundation. It's reminding him, where do I stand? How should I react? And what really matters to me? And I think that comparison to the power of now is a really strong one, because that's also a huge meditation in how do I react to things right now? How am I going to focus myself?
Yeah, totally. So there we are, Mark. I mean, we've had 6 big rules from Jordan Peterson. Do you feel like what's your gut feeling? Do you think all of our listeners can go 4 Jordan Petersons back to back? What's your gut feeling, Terry?
I think I'm really looking forward to next week. So this week, the first 6, I believe, are quite reflective on ourselves and internal. And the next 6, so rules 7 to 12, are kind of a little bit more, dare I say, practical. But I want to get into them with you, Mike, to determine whether that's a correct analysis or not. Mm-hmm. And then I'm really don't know. Beyond Order could be a natural extension, and we could make a 4-parter. But again, I mean, listeners, you've got to help us. You've got to guide us with what you'd like to hear.
I think so. And where would you send everyone? Where is the destination that they can give us their feedback, their thoughts and ideas?
They can pop along to www.moonshots.io and leave us in the top of the bar a little bit of feedback. We've got a nice forum that everybody can get in touch with, or alternative listeners, you can get in touch with us via email, hello@moonshots.io.
What
we
a
can't
place
wait
to
to hear.
What a place to go right there. So, Mark, of all of the ideas, which one is sticking with you? Which one is still there talking to you, whispering to you?
There's a few practical ones like stand up straight that I'm always going to remember. But for me, the big penny drop aha moment today was comparing yourself with who you were yesterday.
Yep. It's so liberating, that thought, isn't it?
Liberating is a great word for that, actually. It is liberating because then you give yourself permission. You feel more free. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very much in line with that idea of like, if you went out, you played the game and you gave it your very best, right? Then you can just accept the result because you gave it your all, and, you'll wake up tomorrow and play in the next game and give that your best too, right?
Perfect. Give it your best.
Well, Mark, we have come finally, after 128 episodes, we have actually done a Jordan B. Peterson show. Thank you, Mark. It was fantastic. And I really am grateful for you helping me getting some good rules for life. So there you have it, everybody. Thank you to you, our listeners, our moonshotters, all of you who are looking for rules to unlock the very best version of themselves. And today we started with 6 of the best from Jordan Peterson. And it was a wild adventure into discipline and freedom and adventure, responsibility, working out how to get it done. And that journey started with very much self-awareness. He told us to stand up straight with your shoulders back and to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. A bit of self-care, don't we need that? And don't forget, you should surround yourself with people that actually care for you, who want the best for you. And that helps us to make good choices in life. And the first choice he asked us to do is to compare yourself with who you were yesterday and not with somebody else. And if you do that, you'll be able to raise great teams, maybe even raise a great family with people who like each other, who are liked by others, and can offer their best version of themselves to the world. And if you've done that, you can have the power, you can have the purpose, the strength to not be a victim. But as Jordan Peterson asked us, he can go out into the world and do everything to set your life straight. Don't blame others. Take the ownership for your life. So there you have it, Moonshotters. We've got the first 6 rules for life from Jordan B. Peterson. I hope you've got that energy, that willingness to go out and be the very best version of yourself. That's it for the Moonshot podcast. That's a wrap.